Welcome to Griefspace. You are right where you need to be if you lead employees experiencing losses such as divorce, death, relationship fractures, and pregnancy loss, returning to work from maternity leave, and reaching to the point of burnout. And you are in the right place if you are the one experiencing loss, keep carrying stress at home, and if you never leave work without bringing unfinished tasks home with you, and if you work nonstop, including evenings and weekends, and if you're tired of feeling incapable in a career that you should be able to manage, and if you dread Sunday evenings, and finally, if the career you once loved often feels unsustainable. Everything can change when you take a different approach. I'm Lisa Kelly, a certified life and health coach, and I specialize in helping grieving professionals rebuild focus, energy, and balance so they don't need to miss work on bad days and they can meet the demands of their work and personal lives without denying their loss. And I'm here with Dr. Cheryl Williams-Jackson. She's an educator, consultant, and a former mental health therapist. Her degrees are in clinical psychology. Dr. Cheryl works with early childhood programs, educators, and mental health professionals to strengthen trauma-informed practices and emotional support systems. Her work emphasizes reducing stress, preventing burnout, and helping organizations integrate self care and mental wellness into everyday policies and workplace culture. Thank you, Dr. Cheryl, for visiting us here at Griefspace to share some of your expertise on coping at work and home, especially after a loss. Dr. Cheryl, many times people feel exhausted after work, not because of what they accomplished, but because of what they didn't complete.
Yeah.
Your concept of brain bookmarks, it's especially helpful if your work keeps shifting during the day, right?
Oh, yeah.
Please explain these bookmarks.
Yeah, and I'll tell you now, I've been working on Brain Bookmarks for quite a few years because I like to live whatever I'm putting out there. And so these are things that I was doing myself. And then I would share it to colleagues to also use. And it wasn't until recently that a wonderful coach helped me to name them as Brain Bookmarks. So I do have to thank Coach Teresa for helping me with that. And but the whole concept is that, as helping professionals, and so when I say helping professionals, I'm talking about educators, mental health professionals, definitely my human service professionals to do the work that they do. And this can range from being an intake specialist where you're at the front desk when you go to the doctor's office and you're coming in very feeling vulnerable because you're not feeling well or something isn't going well in your life. And someone there has to meet them. And the hopes is that they're trained in how to kind of work with people who are under stress. And it can go from, that intake specialist to the case manager, to the social worker, to the clinical psychologist, to the doctor, to you name it. Anyone who is there to help to support, and that includes coaches. Because when I think about them, I think about how often let's just say in 10 minutes, we have to switch our mind from one thing to another. So imagine a nurse who gets this, the light going off and the sound going off while they were working with one client or patient here, and they're having to run over and help this other patient. Our minds are having to switch so quickly that we can get tired. And it becomes stressful, and it can lead to burnout. It can lead to compassion fatigue. It's so many things that it can lead to. We don't often think about those little transitions. And I do so much talking about the transitions that we have in our life. Brain Bookmark is about transitions that we make that we don't think about and we don't put a finger on them. I can give you an example of one brain bookmark. I actually am working on trying to finish a chapter in a book, and it's around mental wellness in organizations and educational environments. I put it aside for like 2 weeks, and in my head I just started feeling the stress coming up that I need to get back to it. Oh, but I don't know where to start. When I opened my laptop up and I went into my Google Drive, there's this note that popped up saying, "Hey Cheryl, this is where you left off."
Yeah.
And it had a note, and I always use one sentence. It's where I'm going to pick up now that I stopped that, so that I don't stress, where I can pick up. And right there, I was able to pick back up. and get back to work instead of spending an hour trying to figure out where did I leave off? Where do I need to pick up? I'm always thinking about how can I make it a little bit easier, is that I needed a note on my desk, which I normally tell my clients to do, that said, you left a brain bookmark in the Google Drive for where to pick up.
Right.
A bookmark to the bookmark to remind me that, oh yeah, I don't have to worry about it. I did leave it in a safe place, and it's in the memory of it is there. Because, I know we trust our brains, but when stress sets in, the stress takes over the fact that that memory is there. If you've ever stressed over anything, you'll see that what can happen often is that there are certain things that you may end up forgetting to do. That's why they tell you, if you ever are stressed, don't just get in your car and start driving.
Right.
Because it's not that you won't forget how to drive, but that stress can take over your automatic, kind of motions that you would do in your driving and your decision making. Yeah.
Mhm.
Our brains are
Wow.
powerful and
Right,
beautiful.
and the grieving brain requires so much more care,
Yes.
and brains that are experiencing any type of
Yeah.
trauma, really, grief is a trauma,
Yeah.
and so I try to encourage workers and their leadership to try to find repetitive tasks, at least when they first return to work.
Right.
But in some places, you don't have that luxury of doing repetitive tasks to reduce that friction.
And I'll tell you one of the things, like for instance, with someone working in crisis environment, and I've worked with individuals around this also, where they may not have time to pause in a task, they may not have time to write it down. So what I have them to do is, as soon as you get started, just write down where you picked up. That way, when you have to run away, at least you know where you picked up, and it gives you
Right.
idea of where to start, and you can look for where do I need to pick up with what I was doing.
Smart.
Yeah, so I'm always trying to find ways to help
Yeah.
with that. And again, I guess we can call it a mini transition that can have such a powerful impact on our stress level. It is a transition, but it's one that we don't think about, in our day. And we have so many transitions that happens in the day. But for helping professionals, because that's my world, I know we have so many that can be so different. If I'm a case manager, I can go from helping someone find housing, and within 5 minutes, I'm handling a crisis that someone is
Right.
having. And that
All those shifts.
it's a big shift that you end up having, and then you got to go back to, oh yeah, I was going to send this individual information about resources for housing, and it's like you have to try to remember that, and eventually all those things you have to remember can take a toll on you. And so I try to
Mhm.
find little techniques that they can use, or strategies that they can implement as part of their routine, that before I get up from this desk, I'm going to leave a little note. I literally keep a little tablet on my desk for that reason, where I've already put the date on it and I already wrote down exactly what I'm working on. That way, if I have to get up and leave, at least I know that's where I picked up.
It reminds me of my brain dump notebook that I
Yes,
keep,
yeah. Oh,
that I encourage people to keep
yeah,
on their side, at their side,
yeah.
just anything that comes to your mind, soccer practice,
Hmm.
what you're going to buy at the store. If something comes to your mind, get it out of there and put it on your
Right.
brain dump notebook.
Another thing that helped me to come up with the idea of the brain bookmarks is that I was living in a space where Sundays, after 3 o'clock, became my stressful time of the week. And
Really?
yeah, and it was because I wasn't remembering where did I leave off, what was on the calendar, what was needing to pick up on Monday. So Sunday night
Mhm.
became stressful because I wasn't thinking about that. I needed something to hold what was happening on last week that is carried over to this week. I needed somewhere for that to be held, instead of
I think
being
what I
held here.
Yeah. I think what I would do is Friday when I clocked out of work. I think that would be the best time to write down where you start again on Monday. Dr. Cheryl, some of the ideas that we have as coaches come through experiences that we too have experienced ourselves.
Yeah, yeah.
That was a perfect example that, you dread Sundays because you don't know where you're going to begin on Monday.
Yeah, so when I talk with helping professionals, I let them know that, I'm not just saying this because, it's something to say or something I read somewhere. I really am living it myself. Even right now, because in my intro, you talked about that. I was serving as a mental health therapist. I was serving as a professor. And then I have my consulting business and I have my coaching business. And then I have my grandchildren, who have games and want grandma to be there, Um,
Mhm.
all of these things are so important. That's how I started my business, was working with families around the stress that they may have been experiencing. And I literally just gave them that information, that it was the calendar. For individuals where a child was living in two different homes that they were living out of because the parents were not together, I would have the parent to have a calendar for their child where it was written down whose house after school that you would go to. I can see how the child was stressed at the end of the day, where in their mind they're thinking, oh, I'm going back to mom's house, and then all of a sudden there's dad picking them up and the child
Mm.
stressing, going, oh, wait a minute, well, what about, I thought I was. And I know you talk about grief, and it was one of the reasons why I was so excited when I found out that you have a podcast and just to talk about the transitions. I just had some life changes in 2024, same week. In August of 2024, my father passed. In August of 2025, same week, my father in love passed, and so my husband's father, and I use father in love just so instead of father in law. And, this is someone who has been in my life pretty much as long as my father has been in my life. So for
Mhm.
me, part of my process was that in my journal, I actually had to write down about this transition also, because I had to remember that when, when birthday comes, when a holiday comes along, I had to remind myself that my father wasn't there, you know.
That first
Yeah,
year.
that first
Mhm.
year. I literally
Yeah.
had to leave myself on my calendar for August to sit down, think about dad, because that
Mhm.
was my transition, where I wouldn't wake up going, oh, oh, that's right, he's not here, so I'm not going there this year. But I did make a note in my calendar that here's what I'm going to do during that time, and remember that you're planning for how you're going to go back home to for the first year to say, Dad, I'm still remembering you, or something like that.
Right,
But it was my
right.
reminder, so I didn't wake up going, oh my gosh, that shock.
Mhm.
Yeah.
In itself, it was a
Yeah,
bookmark.
it was a bookmark in itself.
Mhm.
So I find so many ways to try to generalize the usage of this idea of brain bookmarks. And I think that when I meet with individuals for coaching, I try to help them to figure out how to implement it in their life, because it's not going to look like it looks in my life. On Sunday night, I do a brain dump about everything that's on my mind as far as what needs to get done. And then I'm able to organize it into the things that need to get done now, the things I can give to someone else, the things that can move to the next week, things like that. And so when I meet with clients, I try to help them to figure out how brain bookmarks can work in their life, where it's not
Right.
overwhelming. Yeah.
The brain is always searching for a starting point and an ending point. We have a hard time with infinity before and infinity after.
Yeah.
So it gives it a starting point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it anchors
It
us, and
does.
the bookmarks anchor us. We've got the transitions through, with tasks,
Hmm.
Dr. Cheryl, and then you address transitions throughout the year that are more emotional transitions after a loss,
Right.
and it really does get a little easier after for the second year because you don't have to experience that first again.
Yeah. Every year in August for the last 5 years, I've been in DC during that same week. So when I found out about my father, I was in DC doing the same
Mm,
same room, same hotel, everything, and then the year later,
really?
the exact same thing. So I'm going back this year. I have to find a way to remind myself of that heartbreak that takes place.
When we go somewhere for the first time after a loss, we get a lot of triggers,
Hmm.
um, during that time, so it's good to ride those out sometimes. Sometimes it's good to avoid them, but also it's good to lean into the pain sometimes, and I think that's what you did
Yeah,
right there.
yeah, I agree. I agree.
Another thing that I use with my clients is to clear the clutter not only in your house,
Yeah.
but to clear the clutter in your calendar and learn to say no to things. You know that it could be just temporary, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I always think back to me doing a keynote at a college and me sharing about the no and how comfortable I am with my no and why I'm comfortable with the no because I that's me creating the boundaries. And every summer we would get asked, would you like to teach during the summer? I believe that I became known as the no summer professor, which meant don't even put Cheryl down as someone you're calling to ask. And I tell them, I truly appreciate that you recognize that my no is pretty strong, but my no can possibly change to a yes if there's some type of an emergency. And so it's because I'm so strong on that boundary with the no that I then decided, oh, you know what? Let me teach a class or a training on how to create scripts, your own scripts for how to say no.
I do recall you said you had a free gift
Yes. Yes.
with
It's 10 things to recognize before stress becomes your normal. Because we can adjust to stress sometime. And it's not until vacation, the weekend, or retirement that we begin to realize, whoa, I was living under stress. And the idea here is
yeah,
that what the quiz is doing is it's asking you 10 questions, but each of the 10 questions are actually pointing to my foundations around here are the things that can cause stress that can lead eventually to that burnout and compassion fatigue that I was talking about. And so what I do is that I have people to go through it and I offer them to come and sit down and talk with me about any of those that are on there. And then I have a video that goes along with it. But the idea is for us to begin to recognize and be able to define what is self care and what is also stress for me. What does that look like and feel like for me? To begin to look at it in a very different way. And when I say a different way, I mean a deeper way because that's the way that we're going to be able to implement and make sure that self-care is working for us is that we have to dig a little deeper in understanding what self-care is. And so I love the 10 things to recognize before stress becomes your normal because it starts at the very foundation of let's kind of look and see where stress is showing up for you and what it's
yeah,
looking like. Let's define it.
right.
Yeah.
And listeners, you can pick that up in the show notes. It's a free gift from Dr. Cheryl.
Yeah. Yeah.
I discuss relaxation a lot too, and we are trained to just push harder and harder will result in higher results.
Mhm.
But we are now noticing in science that bringing the body down a few notches in relaxation and the pushing and the exercise, it really needs to be soft at this point,
Mhm.
and softer is more effective. So biking to you is soft on your system.
Yes, yes. But going for a mile walk or
Mhm.
that is not soft for me. And I love the way that
Right,
you're defining that and how you're describing it. Yeah, it's not soft for me. For some
right.
people, gardening is soft, where they get that clarity in their gardening.
So, you hear so many times that people are going to retire. I'm just going to push through this until retirement.
Mm,
Well, I just wanna say that being tense like that, we're building up something that we're going to regret later. Many times you hear of people getting sick during this time,
mhm.
and that's because finally the body can receive and it's just not receiving something good. And then you hear these stories that, oh, they made it to retirement and they got sick,
Yeah,
or they made it through their grieving process and then they ended up with a chronic
yeah,
illness. But that's because your body slowed down enough to get sick.
yeah.
So it's important to bring on that relaxation intentionally before it's too late.
This is so important what you're talking about. I always say a great test for whether or not stress is living as a normal part of your body, of your day, whatever you want to call it, is to think about are you living for the weekend? Are you living for the
Oh,
holiday? Are you living for the vacation? And a lot of times what happens is you'll get the 3 or 4 day weekend and it takes you a whole day just to be able to relax to get through that 4 day or 3 day weekend because your body is already saying, I don't know how to do this relaxation thing. It's about how really being honest with yourself about how you're living today. What is your body telling you? You know, when you picked up that painkiller like Advil to get through the day, did you go back and address it? Did you go back and talk to your body to say, why was my head hurting? Why did I have, pain in my shoulder? Sometimes it even has been a message to them that they needed to talk to someone, whether it was a therapist or to your supervisor, that something needed to change here.
When people work with me as a grief coach, their expectation is to cry and talk about their loss, and we do some of that, but it's not a huge part of the program.
Good.
A large part of the program is restructuring your day,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're very thankful because they leave better than when they started
Yeah.
in more ways than addressing their losses.
Yeah.
We don't want people in the workforce to use their vacation time cleaning the pantry or cleaning the garage, and that takes
It really and
intentional
truly
planning.
does. Yeah, it really and truly
And it
does take
helps.
intention.
And it
I
helps.
used to call my program intentional self-care. Why? Because I wanted that word intentional, that it's not just self-care that someone told you to do. It's being really intentional about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the work that you do. When I first started teaching in human services, I was teaching a class, and the title of the class was Death and Dying. Already, just the name can make you go, "Ooh, I don't want to take that class."
Right.
But the first thing I say to students is that the class is about life. And what
Mm.
I hear you as you're talking, and I listen to your podcast, what I hear is life. Yeah,
Dr. Cheryl, that's wonderful. Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah, it is life. It's life, death, and preparation for death, and dealing with losses such as divorce and relationships. Those could actually cause positive pivots in our
yeah,
life,
yeah.
things that we didn't plan on. And then it's how we react to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know my daughters and I know that my grandbabies, that they are watching me in these various transitions, including when it's having to deal with loss. In teaching child development, that's one of the things, again, going back to transitions, that's one of the things that we teach so much about with transitions. And I remember when we first really in California, when we first really started talking about infants and toddlers and the need for them to be with one person for the first, who's their caregiver, not just their parents or their family, but also if there's someone taking care of them outside of the home and that person leaves, that for them, that's a loss. That they
Agreed.
begin to grieve around it.
Mhm.
And so we begin to see the behavior that looks like grief, that a child has gone through a loss, that they've lost something. And it really helped to change policies because a lot of the policies was looking like our K through 12, where every year you change, to a new teacher. But the research was telling us that when you have children who are switching every year, that there is a couple of months that they are falling behind because they're making the adjustments, not just with who that teacher is, how that teacher teaches, but also the environment that they're in. The Waldorf school, where the children do stay with the same teacher for several years before they switch over. And and a lot of the research was showing how the transition or the falling back wasn't taking place because they were staying with the same teacher. But we make minor, changes so that the transition of the environment isn't having such an impact on us.
That's impactful too for people who are grieving on the job. Maybe it wasn't a death or a bereavement.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a different type of loss and they find themselves back at work.
Mhm.
And what you just showed me, Dr. Cheryl, is that they've sort of lost momentum.
Mhm.
So we need to give them the grace to pick up that momentum again.
It's all about the plan. What does the plan look like for you? And it's one of the reasons that your work is so important because I mean, I wouldn't think about meeting with someone like a coach. We had not had a loss in our life for like 20 years, I want to say. I did meet with a therapist who was helping me through that transition. And the good thing is that I had some ideas of things that I could do because of me and me being such a neuro geek that I am, knowing how to heal those neurons and try to get my mind to think in a different way. I was able to implement some of that. But imagine those individuals who don't have that and to have to try to navigate that whole thing of loss and grief on their own. And I think a lot of times coaches and therapists can actually help us in that grieving process. And it's one of the reasons why what you do is just so important.
You're just in survival mode sometimes, but it's really important to clear your environment. And if you even have to clear pictures off the walls, whatever it takes for you. Again, coaching is curated and tailored, it's not standardized. So what brings comfort to somebody else might not bring comfort and clarity to another person. So you had some great ideas when we spoke prior to this podcast, Dr. Cheryl, about the environment, and you were referring to the children and their learning environment. Let's talk on that.
Yeah. I was gifted was the opportunity to go through a training program around infants and toddlers, which also led into preschoolers and led into K through 12, which led into adults and young adults. And so, so that example that I was giving earlier about, not changing the environment too much for young children is true for us also as adults, but not making major changes to their environment early on as they begin to adjust, because what they begin to lose is the feeling of safety. And it's always going to come back to security and feeling safe. When I'm teaching about working with children, it is where I always start. But even in working with adults, I want to know where security and safety lives for them also. Because even with loss of a person, you have to think about what is that taking away from us for our security and our safety. All of that as a child, what they need from you is that consistency, that it's something that happens ongoing for them. It's just like when an adult has someone that's in the house with them every day and now that person is no longer there. You may not feel as secure, because they're not there, because they were a part of your security in that environment.
Brain loves predictability,
Yes, our brain
right?
loves predictability. That is so true.
Mhm.
So a lot of times when we create the environment, we have to think about what changes we're making in it also. That's the one thing we know about the development of us as human, is that development is about how things stay the same, but it's also about how things change. But we don't think that much about how things stay the same also as a part of development. Yeah.
You're reaching for predictability.
Yes, we are. We are reaching for predictability. Yes.
And we don't want abrupt transitions. We want soft,
Yeah.
smooth transitions.
Life already
And
throws us enough abrupt,
right,
transitions,
unpredictable.
yeah. I mean, you can just think back to 2020, someone telling you that you can't get up and go to work anymore. I'm going to tell you now, I got up, got in my car, and drove all the way to the college before I realized, oh, we're on lockdown.
Oh,
It
wow.
didn't even
Yeah,
dawn on me that,
yeah,
yeah, not that many cars on the highway.
right,
It
right.
was like,
You were in autopilot,
yes.
Dr.
And
Cheryl.
I didn't have my brain bookmark there to remind me, that remember we're on Zoom, that you're not going into the college to teach your classes or do your office hours. You're going to be on Zoom. Yeah.
Yeah, well, grief, stress, and burnout are not always signs that someone's weak or failing. Often they're signals from a nervous system carrying too much for too long. And support, environment, and understanding can create the greatest sense of relief. Thank you, Dr. Cheryl, for your helpful insight today. Hey, how can people work with you?
Yeah, the best way to reach me is by going to my website, drcherylcoaching.co, not com.co, or to find me on under Dr. Cheryl Coaching on YouTube, Dr. Cheryl Coaching, also on LinkedIn.
And also put a link to her 10 questions, which is a free gift for you. Take the quiz and find out where you stand.
And then come and talk to me. Yeah.
Yes. How can they work with you, Dr. Cheryl?
Yeah, I do group coaching, and it's a group of women who come together and we go through different things around self care, but also mental wellness. And then those who are helping professionals who want to expand their reach, I created a certification program where they are able to learn not only how to coach, but also some of the workshops that I have, I take them through a certification through those workshops, but I highly recommend just come and sit down and talk with me. Because I worked with infants and toddlers and preschoolers in the past, they have taught me how not to bite, which means I don't bite. And it can be a very minor pivot that you're looking to do, but come and talk with me.
Information on how you can talk to Cheryl and work with Dr. Cheryl, again, will be in the show notes. And how you can work with me regarding your loss will also be in the show notes. And until then, I'll always be here to help you become the boss of your loss.